What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today we're going to be getting into 3.12 update for my Volatile Dead Spellslinger. I recommended this to you guys for a league start because I knew it could still be just as viable as it ever was, and it really is. With our the only cuts we have to make is a little bit of HP. We're not getting as much as increased life from our tree as we were before with this budget-friendly version. But there are a few ways around the mana reservation issues and the passive tree that we can make it so we can just use our same build with a specific helmet or amulet. So I'm going to be getting into the mana reservation issues later on in the build and telling you guys how to get around it. But I'm going to be explaining my League Start friendly version also, because I know many of you like to play this on League Start. So the big hit in this patch for 3.12 was that Spellslinger had an increased mana reservation. This made it so we cannot spec our 3 Spellslingers, so Desecrate, Volatile Dead, and Detonate Dead. We cannot put all of those on Spellslingers with just the Sovereignty Wheel spec'd into. This created a big issue for League Start, so we could only use Volatile Dead as a main damage. Detonate Dead is a huge damage boost to this build. It's an immediate like pop damage. So if you cast it on enemies, it's just killing the enemies it's on. It was really useful to use on League Start, so I couldn't use it until about level 70 when I figured out the workaround for using it. So you can still easily clear the game with only Volatile Dead. So this video is not going to be a complete overview of the build or a build guide like my other ones. It's going to kind of be like a more of the update video. It's not going to be as in depth, and if you're curious or if this is your first time seeing Volatile Dead Spellslinger, go to my other videos on my channel. I made 2 other videos on this build explaining what you should look for at League Start, what items to look for upgrades, if you're having issues with using Barrage or any type of skill, or you're not getting your Volatile Deads to spawn or anything and having those issues. I made a video on that in my other update video. This video is just going to specifically be the changes I made for 3.12. The tree changed a decent amount. I had to make a decent amount of workaround for it. POB didn't update immediately for the new Spellslinger changes for the mana reservation, so it took me a lot longer than I was hoping for these changes, but I'm pretty happy with these changes I've made. There's a few variations and different tweaks to the passive tree. I actually have 2 different versions of the League Start passive tree, and I was happy with both of them, and I kind of just went with the one that costed the least amount of regrets for me. But I'm going to leave both skill trees in my path of building, so make sure you check it out. One's a little more structured for higher life, and the other one's a little more structured for a little bit more damage with also a little bit of life. So I recommend testing those out and see what playstyle you're going to want to mirror more likely. Another issue I was having with this build is that we don't have Call to Arms anymore, so our Enduring Cry is an instant. So I don't think Enduring Cry is mandatory for this build. You can use a cast when damage taken, or a like Vol Molten Shell, or a Vol Grace instead of Enduring Cry if you're not enjoying that. I still ended up using Enduring Cry. But yeah, I'm just kind of rambling so you guys can see some of the gameplay I've been using. I'm not the highest tier of maps. I haven't played as much this league as I have other leagues, but I'm in late yellows, early red maps. I've spent maybe 30 C on my gear, and it's just melting all content, not a worry at all. And I know this build is super strong, and I hope you guys give it a try if you're really interested in this type of build. So I'm going to be getting into the more in-depth parts of this build right after all of the mapping videos. Alright, first I'm going to do a quick rundown of my gear and then the jewel sockets. This is all on the POB and my PoE form. I am using slightly different gem links, so I'm going to have both variations. To be honest, I enjoy using Barrage more than using Frenzy with Barrage support. It feels a little more smooth, but Frenzy with Barrage does give you more damage overall. So take that as you will. I recommend trying them out both. And so yeah, I'm going to get into the gear really quick. So I just bought a 6-link and crafted it myself. Just crafted it with life, and then I was kind of just done with it. This build is super easy to gear for. You can get over res cap super easily, so I wasn't really worried about getting resistance. For the helmet, I bought a base that had 40% volatile dead damage, and then I crafted it with chaos res. And another point in this league is that I focused on getting chaos res, so I'm chaos res capped actually right now. That was kind of a goal I had for this build, just to make it a little bit more tanky. Last league I only got to like 20% chaos resistance, and you can see I'm overcapped now, so we are really good at mitigating all damage now. As for the gloves, just really trash gloves. Basically on the helmet, the gloves and the boots, I just wanted life and a little bit of chaos res and a little bit of res if I need to fix it. And for the boots, you always want movement speed. I always go for 25 or 30% movement speed with life. The rings, I upgraded these kind of recently because I wanted to max out my chaos res. So I actually bought this one. So I made sure they had life on them, a little bit of res, and that was about it. Those are the only important things. This amulet I got recently as well. Fire damage leeches life is pretty fun to have. I would rather have +1 to fire skill gems or damage penetrates fire resistance. Those are way better rules than having fire damage leeches life. But if you can't afford it, fire damage leeches life is actually pretty cheap, to be honest, and I got one with a decent life roll, so it kind of just worked out. As for the wand, it's the same exact wand as you want for the other ones. You just want really high fire damage and fire damage to spells roll. Those are your two most important rolls you can get on a wand. The next most important, I would say, would have to be fire damage, spell damage, and fire is extra fire damage is extra chaos, or non-chaos as extra chaos, or +1 fire gems. Those are the next most important. And you're always going to want a trigger socketed spell when you use a skill crafted onto your wand. Super important for getting that next tier of damage. If you can't get this, I actually spent about 2.5 days, maybe 3 days, trying to get this craft. So don't be discouraged if you can't get it right away. You're gonna have to work for it a little bit, or if you want it immediately and you're willing to spend a little bit extra, you can buy one off the trade site with this craft already on it, and just use that until you get the craft yourself. That's a really good way to get it. And as for the shield, I have a really pretty shield, just huge life, fire damage is extra chaos, and a little bit of spell block. We are spell block capped because of our glancing blows, so that's really nice. We're almost attack block capped. As you can see, we're at 66 attack and 75 spell, so it's pretty defensively oriented for this build. And as for the belt, just high life and more chaos res, and I got a crystal belt because we have pretty decent ES. I'm not focusing on ES or anything, no ES regen, no ES leech, but just having a good ES pool just is kind of nice to have. As for the flask, you want to hit Xeres and a bismuth. If you can, they're super cheap. They're like 1C each, 2C maybe. So go ahead and buy those. And I want a divine flask. Eventually, if you get enough fire damage leech somehow, so either through your cluster jewels or have a really good amulet or other pieces, you can probably take off your divine flask and swap it for a granite flask or some type of other flask that's more defensive. I actually want to swap this for a roomies. I didn't have the budget for a roomies yet, but I would swap divine flask for a roomies because we are getting Chaos damage leeches life from its Zeres, so that should be as much defense as I would need. Quicksilver, Jade, pretty standard, really good. And we're going to be getting into the jewels now. So the jewels are pretty much identical. 6-link Volatile Dead is the same. So we have the first three are, I would say, is Spell Cascade, Spellslinger, and Volatile Dead, 3 most important. The next three would be, next link would be Inspiration. Then I would say Conk Effect, then Hypothermia. But these last two could be swapped either way. Just a side note, I know I've mentioned this in multiple videos, but Inspiration, you're going to have Inspiration on your attack. So either your Frenzy, your Barrage, your Power Siphon, whatever you're using, you have to have Inspiration linked to that in order to get Inspiration charges on your Volatile Dead and your other things like Detonate Dead. Let's get into the things that are the same. So faster attack, shield charge, fortify, Enduring Cry. Enduring Cry doesn't have to be linked to any of these. It just happened to be linked. Just faster attacks, fortify, and shield charge. Then we have Detonate Dead, Spellslinger, Inspiration. Pretty standard. We don't 4-link this because I need a socket for Flame Dash. You could get a socket in this and 4-link it, but then you wouldn't have enough mana reserve, so you would have to get like a helmet to help you out. So I just use a 3-link for now, and it's plenty of damage, so don't worry about it. Spell Cascade, Desecrate, Spellslinger, really baseline, really strong. So the gloves and the wand, these links are actually different than my other build videos because I am now using Frenzy and Barrage support for that extra little damage over regular Barrage. I do enjoy Barrage a little bit more than Frenzy, but that little bit of extra damage does come in handy when you're fighting things like bosses. So we have Frenzy, Barrage, Combustion, and Inspiration. So the idea here is that we swapped Combustion off of Wave of Conviction, and we're trying to ignite with our Frenzy because we're doing a little bit of fire damage now because we have it on our wand. So if we ignite with our Frenzy, we get the Combustion support, minus res, so that's super helpful. Mostly the only reason we have this is against bosses. Don't worry about using this against every single little enemy because usually you just kill them right away. Next on our trigger, socketed spells from our wand, Wave of Conviction, Bone Offering, and Flammability. So this is we had to change this because you can't have Curse on Hit on our gloves like we did before. We didn't have enough links because we couldn't link Inspiration and all that. We would need a 5-link, so I had to change around these gems a little bit. If you have a Curse on Hit ring, instead you can take off Flammability, put Combustion back on here, and put something else on here like Coaling Strike or something else, whatever other skill you want, Onslaught. It doesn't really matter, but this is the setup I have right now. It's really budget, really easy to use, because every time you cast, you get that why isn't Flammability casting? There we go. Flammability casted. We get all our casts pretty quick. Flammability is a good AoE. You can usually see it make that ring. So it's pretty strong. I recommend using this setup if you're interested in using Frenzy. If you're not interested in using Frenzy, go to my old video, my old POBE. Just wherever I have just regular Barrage linked up, use that linkage. It's far better if you're not using Frenzy. Now we're going to be getting into the most important part of the build, which is our passive tree. So the big change is that we added Charisma to our tree. We needed this extra 12% mana reserve on top of our Sovereignty Will to be able to spec all 3 Spellslingers. Other small changes, you can see we're not using a Cluster Jewel, but I would like to use a Cluster Jewel eventually. So this is what the Cluster Jewel looks like. We have Doriana's Lesson, Sadist with small life nodes. I recommend getting Sadist is the most important on a large Cluster Jewel. And then, yep, just getting small ones with increased life. This is a really good node because it gives us a lot of regen. But our passive tree looks a lot different. We're not speccing straight through here anymore, or not coming down to Soul of Steel. We're coming straight to the left and then going straight right. kind of sucky that we have to go right. So there are ways around it, but this is our league start variation. And if you're interested in using this as a league start and you don't know the pathing for the tree, if you go into the path of building that I made for you guys and you click down here, there's different versions of the tree. So you can see this is the starting tree. This is the tree you want to do on your first few levels, and then you click tree 2, and then it specs a little different. I'm going to fix all the changes I made. I was playing around a lot with this passive tree, but I'm going to make it perfect. But make sure you utilize which trees you use. This was another variation of it, but make sure you utilize the leveling trees in my builds if you're confused on what to spec next. So now we're going to get into the different versions you can do. So Sovereignty specs 14% reduced mana reserved, and Charisma gives us 12% reduced mana reserved. These numbers are important because if we can reenact this 12% from equipment or other gear, we'll be able to do the same thing with just unspecking this whole right side and getting a ton more passive points to use for us. So one option, this is the option I don't like as much, but I know people are going to mention it, is to use the Devouring Diadem. Use Devouring Diadem, it gives you socket gems have reduced mana reserved. This can be expensive later in the game or early in the league, so make sure you know that. And you're also going to be using Eldritch Battery now, so you're not going to have your energy shield taking away like helping out your life like normal. Your energy shield is instead going to be your mana pool, and this is important to know because if you're just juicing energy shield and have huge energy shield, you're not going to be using that as your like HP pool anymore. So just know that's going to be a thing if you're using Eldritch Battery or Devouring Diadem. And since we're still in the red, if you use a Conqueror's Efficiency, so this is what we are with Devouring Diadem on Detonate Dead. Make sure Detonate Dead is on your helmet, and if you go around and you spec this 4% and then spec a Conqueror's Efficiency, you're fine. It's all fixed, and we don't have to worry about having too little mana because we're using Eldritch Battery. This is one workaround. I don't enjoy it as much, but it is a workaround if you really are against specking this whole right side. A better option, but it could be more expensive, is to not use Devouring Diadem and actually use the helmet that gives you 5% mana, reduced mana reserved. So that's all I have on this helmet, so my number is going to look weird. And get an amulet, where's the amulet slot, with 5% reduced mana reserved. If you get both of those with your reduced mana reserved, and you give a Conqueror's Efficiency, you'll have 31 mana to use, which is more than enough to cast 2.5 frenzies or barrages. So that should be more than enough to use. If it's really not, then you can come down and spec this 4% again. But the only problem with this is that for the helmet and the amulet, you have to have a tier 1 and a roll for the reduced mana reserved, and it has to be 5. So it can roll, can actually roll 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. You're gonna need 5% on both of these to make this work. So it is more expensive of a choice, but it gives us a lot of freedom in our passive points, because you go from using 112 to 94. So that saves you, what, 18 points? So that's a lot of points you can use. You can get a full cluster jewel, and you can spec more things, like you can spec all over here, and you'll be perfectly fine. So those are some of the options to do. But what I do is super budget and just specking Charisma. It is the easy way to do it if you're a newer player or you're not really big into finding that specific gear or anything, and you just want to play the build. That playing the Charisma version, like over here and specking all these points, you're still going to do tons of damage. You have a tons of life, huge life pool to use, and I more than recommend using it in your own build. If you have different workarounds for the mana reservation issues, hit me up, send a path of building my way. I'll check it out, see if it's worth. And if it's really like amazing and I really missed it, I will either make a new video or post an update on it, and I'll shut you out for it. Anyways, I know I skipped a lot of content in this video. I know there's a lot more things about Volatile Dead that I didn't explain in this video. Make sure you check out my other videos if you're still confused. Make sure you watch both videos or read the forum guide that I posted. It has a ton of detail on what each armor piece, what it's doing. There's a lot of people who ask questions on the forums and on the YouTube comments in my older videos. So make sure you read through those. If you have a question and you think it hasn't been answered, go ahead and leave a comment down below in the comment section. If you leave it down a comment in my YouTube, I am replying to those as soon as possible. If you leave it down in my Path of Exile forums, it takes me a few more days because I don't check that every day. So make sure you guys leave a comment if you have any questions, concerns, or any upgrades to my own path of building. So yeah, thanks you guys for checking out this video. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this build update for the Volatile Dead, and I hope you guys have a great league and a great day. Later.